You're listening to Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Big Apple Blitz. What is going on? Matt O'Leary alongside Anthony Rivardo. Anthony, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Football is officially back. The Giants were on the practice field yesterday. The Jets also kicking off training camp. Really, the whole NFL is kicking off training camp over the past couple of days, and it's really exciting. It's been a long offseason. This felt like one of the more dry offseason periods that I've been through over the past few years covering the Giants. There were a couple months there where there was just nothing going on after OTAs and minicamp, but now we're fully back. The Giants are back to being the Giants, overthrowing screen passes, suffering injuries on the offensive line. Classic New York Giants football is back, baby.
All the way back, and today's the first open practice for Jet fans, so I'm very excited to see all the clips being put out on Twitter. Honestly, probably pretty shortly, so we will be covering all that, but figured recap the first day and just some notes. And honestly, the first thing with both of these teams that jumped out to me that I'm sure maybe making you a little bit nervous is the offensive line injuries for the New York Giants, and especially Jermaine Illuminor.
Yeah, so Jermaine Illuminor goes down yesterday after taking an elbow to the ribs from Dexter Lawrence. I tweeted out, and I'm going to stand by this. If that happened to me, I'd probably be dead. So major props to Jermaine Illuminor for getting up off the field and walking off under his own power. They brought the card out for him momentarily. He waved it off. Sounds like it was nothing serious, I think is the quote from Brian Dable. And Jermaine Illuminor tweeted himself yesterday that he's all good. So I don't think there's anything serious to worry about there, but seeing Illuminor go down, knowing that Evan Neal is currently on the PUP list, it just highlighted the lack of depth that the Giants have on this offensive line and how they're really banking on Jermaine Illuminor to stay healthy this season, because immediately when he left the lineup, Josh Azidu went in at right tackle. 2 plays later, let up a sack to Kayvon Thibodeau, just highlighting again the concern that the Giants should have on the depth of their offensive line.
Yeah, the depth is definitely a question mark for me on that Giants O-line. And, after it was announced that Evan Neal was going to start on the PUP list, which came first, you had the Greg Van Roten signing. And, as we know, GVR was with the Raiders last year as a starter for them. Giants bring in the old Raiders offensive line coach. So there's the connection there. And that also kind of allowed, at least in the short term, for me, at least in my opinion, I know you feel the same way, that Jermaine Illuminor was going to bounce out to right tackle, where I thought he should have been all along. And then to see him get banged up almost instantly was a little disheartening. Obviously feel bad for him, but luckily it's not anything too major, it seems.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's anything serious. Again, I think it's probably a bruised rib, maybe a cracked rib at the worst, but I don't even think it's anything that serious. So hopefully Illuminor is back on the field soon. They said that he's going to be doing drills off on the side individual today, so won't be with the team, but it shouldn't take long for him to return to the team. So excited about that. We need Illuminor out there. Hopefully he gets on the field soon. And then with Greg Van Roten, obviously they didn't sign him just yet, but they did have him in for the free agency visit. Have to anticipate that a deal will get done within the next week or so, because the Giants obviously know how badly they need offensive line help. That's why they brought GVR in. And again, I think signing him would be a great idea, just to pair him with Jermaine Illuminor, keep that continuity from Las Vegas last year, and also the continuity between he and new offensive line coach Carmen Bristolow. Bristolow unlocked something in Illuminor and Greg Van Roten, made them much better players last year in Las Vegas. So I'm all in favor of bringing those guys back. But with Jermaine Illuminor on the sideline for today's practice, Evan Neal still sidelined. That's another piece of intriguing news that we got recently. Apparently, he was misdiagnosed, which is something that we kind of knew, but was confirmed over the past couple of days by Pat Leonard of the New York Daily News. He said that back in November, when Evan Neal suffered that injury, it was initially believed to be an ankle sprain. After further testing, they revealed that it was an ankle fracture. And so he was doing recovery and doing drills and all that stuff on what was thought to be an ankle sprain. which maybe could have aggravated his ankle fracture even further. So after being misdiagnosed in November, here we are all these many months later. He's still not on the practice field. Meanwhile, he got injured the same game as Daniel Jones, who tore his ACL in that game, and he's a full participant. So I don't really know what's going on with Evan Neal. I don't know if that misdiagnosis is one of the reasons that he's not on the field just yet. But man, I hope he gets on the field soon, because if he doesn't, looks like he's going to lose that job.
Yeah, I was just going to go there next. Is if he can't get on the field, that might be it for him. Like I don't really see a spot where he beats out Jermaine Illuminor if he sticks at right tackle. And that's what it should be, at least in my opinion. It should be a true competition. Now, if they go, well, this is a first round pick and we're trying to prove that we were right and that he could still play, maybe he slots back in at right tackle, and then you have Illuminor move back inside to guard, and then GVR is kind of your depth beyond that. But honestly, if the Giants wanted to get their best 5 out there, I think it includes GVR at right guard, and then at right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor at that point, with Runyon moving from the right guard spot over to the left side of the offensive line.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned Runyon on the left side there, because that is what they had camp start out with, which is surprising because during mini camp and OTAs, they had it flipped. For some reason, they had Jermaine Illuminor at left guard, they had John Runyon at right guard, and they had, I think, Josh Azidu at right tackle. So it was really random. But now to start training camp, they had Illuminor at right tackle, which is where we all wanted him to be. At right guard, they had, I don't remember, John Runyon at left guard, though. And that was the big selling point. John Runyon being on the left side, if you look at his career stats throughout the entirety of his time with Green Bay, his stats on the right side, not very good. His stats on the left side, very good. For some reason, he's just a lot more comfortable playing left guard than he is right guard. He even said that to the media earlier this offseason. So seeing him start out training camp on the left side and Illuminor on the right side, that was exciting for me. And I think that could be one of the keys to actually getting this offensive line to play at a competent level. But filling that hole at right guard, that is something that the Giants need to focus on. I don't know if that's going to be, whether that's Evan Neal moves inside or Josh Azidu steps up in that role, or if Greg Van Roten does get signed. Obviously, I think he takes that starting job, but the Giants do need to figure something out there so that they can keep Runyon at left guard and also play with Illuminor at right tackle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think that, as we just laid out, I think that's puts everyone in the best spot. I think Illuminor is better at right tackle than he is at left guard. As you just laid out there, Runyon, for whatever reason, is more comfortable and better on the left side. Like, shuffling the deck around as much as they are for Evan Neal is just a little bit bizarre for me. And again, I get it. Like, it's a first round pick and they want to show that, like, they didn't make a mistake. This was, if I'm not mistaken, that was the first draft of that regime, right? 2022.
Yeah, that was the first draft of the regime. They took Kayvon Thibodeau, number 5. They took Evan Neal, number 7.
Right. So they want to prove that, like, that their first draft, that it worked. And Kayvon, I think, is a good player, and I think that one's worked. But Evan Neal to this point, I would say hasn't. And I don't know. I think they should shorten up that leash a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that one. And like I keep saying, though, with Evan Neal, if he can somehow pan out and become a competent player at that right tackle spot, everything just falls into place so perfectly for the Giants on this offensive line. But it's a big if, right? If he can be a competent player at right tackle. We haven't seen him be anywhere near competent throughout the first 2 seasons of his career. We've actually seen him be injured more often than we've seen him play decent football. So it's been a struggle for Evan Neal, but if he's able to start at right tackle, win that job, and you move Illuminor to right guard, where he's also been very good throughout his career in comparison to some of the other positions he's played, Runyon on the left side, that is the ideal offensive line. You've got Runyon left, you've got Illuminor right, and then you have Evan Neal to the right of him. But it's really just all contingent on whether or not Evan Neal gets healthy and whether or not he plays even average football. Because if he's not average, I don't want to see him in the lineup, because I think that you can find average guys in free agency if you need to. I think that you can go, and I mean, there's another name out there, Connor Williams. If the Giants want to add him for center/guard depth, he's still a free agent. He's coming off of an injury with the Miami Dolphins last year, but the Giants now have over $11 million in salary cap space from Darren Waller retiring. Either you pick up Greg Van Roten, maybe Connor Williams is the guy that you target, maybe both. They have enough money, but they got to do something, because you can't just be relying on Evan Neal to pan out when he's shown zero signs of development throughout the first 2 seasons of his career. So if they're just fine moving on from Neal already, stick Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle, go sign a new interior offensive lineman to play center, left guard, right guard, whatever it is, and just make sure that you have at least 5 average players on the field this year.
Absolutely, because that you're already taking a risk with the quarterback. It wouldn't be a Big Apple Blitz episode if we don't bring up the year 6 leap. But if Daniel Jones is to get back to form that we saw in 2022, the offensive line also has to be significantly improved, and the play has to improve. Now, on paper, I think with free agency that they had, I do think that they improved it without a doubt. But is it going to be enough? And would they be able to survive some injuries? Which, again, right now they're a little bit banged up. That doesn't mean that that's going to be the case, in week 1, which is still over a month out. But yeah, I think at least something to keep note of.
Absolutely. Totally something to keep note of. And again, I'll be monitoring this offensive line all throughout training camp. Like I said, Azidu gets in there at right tackle, second play, lets up a sack to Kayvon Thibodeau. And I think that kind of ties in more largely to what we heard from practice yesterday. We heard that the offense really struggled to push the ball downfield. Pretty much all of their completions were within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, mostly to Wan'Dale Robinson and running backs. Now, who knows if that's a Daniel Jones problem, an offensive line problem, or maybe the fact is that the defense is a problem for the offense and the defense is going to be really good this year. Who knows? It's only 1 day of training camp, so it's really difficult to interpret all of that, but was a struggle on the first day of practice. A lot of that seemed to be tied to the offensive line, but I'm hoping that it just means the Giants have a good defense this year.
Absolutely. Let's check in. Johnny Boy is hanging with us. So snap, let's go, guys. Yeah, hour earlier today, we got Optima making their way out, allegedly between 11 and 2. They were supposed to come last week and didn't show up, so who knows if that happens. And then Johnny Boy follows it up. Damn, Matt, that background is so fire. We are getting there in the new office. I do like the sign, but I need to get the acoustics right in this room. That's what's killing me right now.
All in due time, but I do agree. The background's looking really good. Like the little mini helmets in the bottom corner, and then that sign, 10 out of 10. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. All right, let's get to our first Jet story of the day. Speaking of first days of training camps, a surprise successful day for Alan Lazard. Some were calling it Alan Lazard's best practice as a New York Jet. Now, again, granted, it's only 1 day of training camp, so I think we have to pump the brakes a touch on the Alan Lazard being back conversation. But I will say, if you can get even anything out of Alan Lazard and not have him be a net negative, which unfortunately he was last year, so much so to the point where in the second half of the season, he was being healthy scratched after getting, a $44 million contract from the Jets. He's going to be overpaid regardless going into this year. But if he can be even 75% the player he was in Green Bay and, be a good run blocker, that was a strength of his that unfortunately he wasn't very good at last year, but be a factor in the run game, catch a couple of passes as, maybe the 4th or 5th wide receiver in the pecking order and just not be horrendous with drops, then I think you sign up for that, and at least you can get through this season before the out.
Yeah, and that would be ideal because obviously we were talking earlier in the offseason about him being a potential healthy scratch this season despite his big contract. So to see him start off training camp on a positive note, that's exciting. I still think, though, it is only the first day of practice, so you got to temper your expectations with Alan Lazard, and you have to see how some of these other players start to develop throughout training camp because oftentimes you'll see rookie wide receivers, for example. I'm just going to bring up Malachi Corley as the example. He might not have a lot of great practices in the first week of training camp, but by the time week 2 or week 3 of training camp rolls around, by the time preseason rolls around, he might be popping off and he might be looking like an even better player than Alan Lazard, who even still might be playing well. So I think you do have to give it time and you have to just play the wait and see game, but it is encouraging to see Alan Lazard start to play a little bit better, have his, quote, best practice as a Jets player yesterday. That is exciting stuff. We'll see how it continues and develops, but he also did have a slightly cryptic tweet that he put out just 32 minutes ago. He said, "Got to be so critical of myself because pressure make a diamond." So take from that what you will. I think that Alan Lazard is trying to say he's been hard on himself, and maybe that's why he's stepping into training camp looking like a new man.
I love it. Let's pull up the tweet from our guy. Alan Lazard, got to be so critical of myself because pressure make a diamond. Love that. And I have another theory too. because a lot of issues with him last year was on the mental side of things. Like drops are, I think, a focus issue more often than not for these wide receivers. And I'm wondering if Rodgers being back is making him feel a little bit more comfortable in comparison to the situation last year with Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyle. I'm not saying Lazard gets a pass for being so bad last year. I don't think it's fair to completely, say that he's blameless in it, but it is a big difference going from a quarterback that you were very comfortable with and had a rapport with in Green Bay and in Aaron Rodgers to then going to probably the worst quarterback room in the league after that. And again, that doesn't, he doesn't get a pass for checking out after that, but I think that could have played a factor in it too.
I think it definitely played a factor in it. And kind of like what you said there, him being comfortable or, uncomfortable without Rodgers in the lineup, being more comfortable this season now that he's back. So we're all Jets fans, right? We're all feeling a lot more comfortable with Aaron Rodgers returning and healthy this season. So you have to assume it's the same for the players as well. Alan Lazard, especially with the rapport that he had with Rodgers from their shared time together in Green Bay. I would imagine that he's probably stepping into training camp with a little bit more excitement and a little bit more energy, knowing that he's going to be catching passes from Aaron Rodgers rather than catching passes from Zach Wilson and some of the other guys from last year.
Yeah, it's that in itself. I mean, I know I feel a lot more comfortable, even with Tyrod Taylor, who's someone we've talked a lot about on this show. But if Tyrod has to come in, Rodgers was talking in a press conference yesterday, and it was actually praising Tyrod, and it was like, not that he was talking about a specific play between a pass between him and Garrett Wilson, and he wasn't like blaming Tyrod. He was just saying like, oh, like if I was in here, I would do this a little bit differently. But he's like, yeah, Tyrod, like he can play. He's a veteran. He's been around the league, which, is something that we've reiterated here on the show. But yeah, for me, when looking at this wide receiver room, I'm really curious to see over the next few weeks in training camp how the pecking order kind of shapes out. My expectation was Lazard was kind of going to be buried on this depth chart a little bit, but if he makes it a little bit more challenging for the Jets to make that decision, that's a really good problem to have.
That's a great problem to have, and that's what you're hoping for. And I'll ask you this, kind of off topic but on topic. Is Tyrod Taylor in the backup quarterback position the biggest upgrade that the Jets made this offseason?
No, it's close. I would say it's close, but going from Mekhi Becton to Tyron Smith at left tackle, I think takes the cake for me.
That's valid. Mekhi Becton, meanwhile, yesterday threw up 10 times on the sideline over in Philadelphia. I'm sure you saw that.
Actually?
You didn't see that? No, Mekhi Becton opened up yesterday's training camp in Philadelphia, threw up 10 times, and just was spewing it all over the sideline. Apparently, that's what happened.
Oh no, that's not great. No, I'm not going to victory lap Mekhi Becton being out of shape in Philly. I won't do that. I like him. I'm sad it didn't work out for the Jets, but I was not at the front of the line begging for them to bring Mekhi Becton back. That's a tough look. That's not the first time that he's struggled at the beginning of training camp with conditioning. So
yeah, I won't take a victory lap on that either, but maybe a small victory sprint, we'll call it. Back in that draft class, we had a lot of Giants fans that really liked Mekhi Becton, and I called it from the onset. I was like, bust. I did a lot of studying of those players that offseason on Fireside Giants. I did a film breakdown on Mekhi Becton and a few other players, offensive tackles. I wanted to stay so far away from Mekhi Becton. I am so grateful the Giants landed Andrew Thomas instead. And Mekhi Becton went, unfortunately, to the New York Jets. But now he's in Philadelphia, puking up the sidelines and hopefully making practice really difficult for the Eagles players.
That is true. Maybe he's making life a little bit harder for those defensive linemen. You never know. But rounding it out with Alan Lazard, just something I'm going to watch not only today but the rest of the camp is how that pecking order shakes out in the wide receiver room, and hopefully Lazard builds on it and has another strong day today. Let's get back to the Giants side of things. Something you hinted at the first segment here, but the offensive struggles from yesterday. Concerned? Where are you at with that, and what happened yesterday?
Yeah, so what happened yesterday was, according to Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post, the Giants really struggled to move the ball down the field. I know that they did make a couple of plays downfield, but none of them were from Daniel Jones. Tommy DeVito connected deep downfield with Allen Robinson on a post route, according to Art Stapleton. And then the Giants posted a video of Drew Lock connecting with New York Jets legend Lawrence Cager on a deep touchdown pass yesterday as well. So Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, they hit a couple deep shots. According to Dunleavy, every single pass that Daniel Jones completed was within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. He did throw a pass downfield to Malik Neighbors. I think it was about a 30-yard pass. Malik Neighbors dropped it. That video surfaced online. Some people were like, oh, he uncorked that dot to Malik Neighbors, but it got dropped. I don't know if you could find that and pull that up, but that was not a dot. That was a wounded duck. That ball hung in the air forever, and it was late. If you watch the play, Jones threw that after Malik Neighbors broke. It hit Malik Neighbors in the hands, sure, but Neighbors should not have had to slow down and jump for that thing like he did. Yeah, ball should have been out by now. Now it's out, and now it floats up.
Oh,
yes,
my God.
Neighbors should have caught that. But that's a bad throw. And so overall, first practice back from the ACL. Again, how much stock can you put into it? Not a ton, but not the best first practice back for Daniel Jones. I believe he went 8 of 13 passing. But again, every completion that he had was within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, according to Dunleavy, mostly to Wan'Dale Robinson and the running back. So Giants offense, not off to a hot start, but it's only one day of training camp. So I guess we got to probably be a little bit relaxed about it.
Yeah, I was going to pull up. This was the tweet that I saw from Connor Hughes, who said, Giants practice over. Daniel Jones finished 7 of 12, final 4 completions, all within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. And then obviously spoke about the health of Jermaine Illuminor. Now, some did not like the first half of that, where he noted the final 4 completions being within 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. But I do think it's worth noting. Like, I don't think he did that with an agenda. Like, if it was Zach Wilson last year, like, I would have wanted to know like what the passes were and what the completions looked like.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it is worth noting it was a crappy weather day. I believe they were dealing with some rain during practice, so maybe not taking a ton of deep shots. And again, it's practice, and we're not on the coaching staff, so we don't know if the objective was to focus on short passing. Maybe today the majority of the throws are downfield. Maybe it was a directive from Brian Dable. Who knows? We don't stand in those little meetings, and we don't hear what is talked about on the sideline. So it is totally possible that Jones wasn't pushing the field or pushing the ball downfield intentionally, and maybe this is what Dable wanted to work on the short passing game. Who knows? But again, 11 on 11 drills, not the hottest start for Daniel Jones. However, he was mobile, which is important. There's a few clips of him breaking contain from the pocket, getting out on the move, and making some throws on the run. That's important. Obviously, coming off of a torn ACL, you want to see that he's fully healthy, that his leg and his mobility will not hinder him. That is a good takeaway. Daniel Jones getting out of the pocket, making some plays with his legs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good point to bring up too, is we don't know what the plan was. Maybe it was to work on the short game and kind of just get him back and get him acclimated. Optics wise, it's not great. I'm not saying like hit the panic button, it's over. I would say slightly concerned, but again, like if this is something that's happening every single day, and then 2 weeks from now we're having this conversation again, yeah, that's an issue. But as you said, it could have been intentional that they were trying to do that. He's out there already today, warming up. So we'll see later on if that's really the case for Daniel Jones.
Of course, and the truth of the matter is, though, at the end of the day, we're not getting the year 6 leap unless Daniel Jones does start to throw the ball downfield. So we do need to see him throw the ball downfield at some point.
This is true. We can't have what is it? The A dot be like 4.5 yards. No good.
That wouldn't shock me. I think we've seen that before for Daniel, Mr. Danny Dimes under 5 yards. But we'll hope to see him throw the ball downfield today. I will say though, it's kind of interesting to note that first practice comes the day after this latest Hard Knocks episode. And, in that Hard Knocks episode, obviously Daniel Jones was a big part of the conversation because they were showing the pre-draft process with the Giants going through their draft board, ranking the quarterbacks all the way at the top, then the receivers. One takeaway that's off topic to it, Malik Neighbors was number 1 receiver on their board. I feel justified and validated. I said Malik Neighbors was number 1 on my board all off season long over Marvin Harrison Jr. The Giants had it the same way. They were really excited to take him at number 6. That's awesome. But on the topic of Daniel Jones, Joe Shane in that Hard Knocks episode was discussing with one of his front office executives and said that he spoke to Daniel and he told him injuries are a problem here. We do still believe in you, but don't be upset with us if a quarterback is in the building following the draft, because we also need to prepare for the future and protect ourselves. So I thought it was all interesting. I do think the growing sense of this being a make or break back against the wall year for Daniel Jones just continues to heighten. And I am very happy about that. I imagine Daniel Jones has to be feeling the pressure. It's either going to make a diamond like with Alan Lazard, or he's going to crumble like a wet piece of paper. We'll see exactly which one it is.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, it's going to be a wait and see game there. But something that I did like from this most recent episode of Hard Knocks was you got a little bit behind the scenes of their plan and their board for the draft. We were talking off air before we got started. I thought of the episodes so far, this might have been my least favorite because it felt a little filler. They went from free agency to spending a whole episode on the pre-draft stuff. I thought we'd get into the draft a little bit more in this one. But what I will say is I think the Giants' interest in quarterback and how serious they were about getting a quarterback was noted. And I saw you tweet about this. The JJ McCarthy thing was definitely just a smokescreen. His name almost never came up.
Yeah, the only time it came up was when Joe Shane's daughter said that that's who she would like to see the Giants draft. And then his son kind of poked fun and said she only thinks that because JJ's attractive. But I thought more interesting than that. Yeah, it was definitely shocking that they didn't even bring up JJ McCarthy, especially considering they had him in for a meeting on Easter Sunday. So that drew a lot of intrigue from Giants fans and reporters. A lot of them were thinking that they were very serious on the McCarthy train. Seems like they weren't at all. Not even in the trade down conversations did McCarthy's name get brought up. But what I found more interesting from that segment was when Joe Shane's son said to him, trade up for Jaden Daniels. You only get this job once. You might as well win. Now, if you're reading between the lines there, it sounds like nobody in that room, Joe Shane and his family, believe that this team is going to win with Daniel Jones. So it was kind of like Daniel Jones took a stray there. Obviously, it was also just praise for Jaden Daniels. But the overlying theme here was that the Giants felt like they needed a different quarterback and they needed to get a game-changing talent in that position in order to win. And like they didn't feel like they had that with Daniel Jones. So that was my main takeaway. I thought that their love for Jaden Daniels was very interesting. It actually seems like they were maybe more interested in Jaden than they were even in Drake May. He became more of the topic of conversation. But at the end of the day, I think that Jaden would have been great for the Giants. And the fact that the Giants were so excited in Jaden Daniels really doesn't paint Daniel Jones and his future with the team in a great light.
No, it definitely doesn't. It felt like the wide receiver was their backup plan, but a backup plan they were very excited about and comfortable about. Like they showed the wide receiver meetings and like they were just gushing over Malik Neighbors, and the conversation between Dable and Neighbors when they're talking about like, oh, they both kind of have a temper. You could tell like Dable kind of fell in love with him from watching the film and watching Jaden Daniels. He's like, he kept calling him a dog. And I mean, that's the truth. I think that Malik Neighbors is a dog, and I think it goes well here for the New York Giants. But I don't think it could be stated or understated just how interested they were in quarterback. Obviously they weren't going to get to 2 with Washington. That just didn't seem like an in-division trade, didn't seem very likely. And then once New England made the decision they were going quarterback, kind of took the Giants out of it because once again, the JJ McCarthy interest didn't really seem to be there.
No, it didn't seem to be there. And on the topic of this trade up, the last point that I really want to hit home on, and I've been pretty vocal on this channel and on Fireside Giants as well, of my surprising support for owner John Mara. I've made this point many times. I do not believe the fan conspiracy theories that John Mara is meddling in all football decisions and preventing this team from getting better. He did not prevent the Giants from allowing Saquon Barkley to walk. That much was demonstrated in the earlier episodes of Hard Knocks. I've cited this one many times. When the Giants traded away Odell Beckham Jr. back in 2019, John Mara was the first one to say, I really didn't want to do this, but Dave Gettleman did, so we let him. And he also mentioned that his grandchildren wouldn't speak to him for weeks after that trade happened. John Mara doesn't meddle in football decisions, and we saw that once again in this Hard Knocks episode. I feel validated again because what he kept saying was, I'm going to have heart palpitations. I'm nervous about this. I don't want to sacrifice too much for the future, but this is exactly how I felt in 2004 when the Giants traded for Eli Manning. So if you guys have a conviction, you go ahead and you do what you have to do. This is your job. This is your football team, your move. John Mara did not stand in the way of anything that the Giants did this offseason. I know he deserves a lot of criticism because his team has not been well ran for the last decade, but he also does deserve respect and praise for not being a meddling owner. There are a lot of owners who get way too involved and create a lot of disruption in the front office. John Mara is not one of them. Yes, he's there and he offers his wisdom and his experience because he's been around the game for so long. He's been in so many front offices, so many winning football teams for the New York Giants, but he's not over involved. He's involved, but he's not taking over and he's not preventing anyone from doing their job. So I commend John Mara for that. I feel validated that they showed that because I've been saying that all offseason long, all for the last couple of years. I've been saying that John Mara is not an intrusive owner. So I was happy to see that. And also just a little bit more encouraged for the future by the fact that John Mara, even though he made this $160 million investment in Daniel Jones, he's not stopping anyone from replacing Daniel Jones either. So that is very encouraging. And again, John Mara does deserve respect from Giants fans for that reason alone.
Yeah, you are right. He is letting the football people do their thing, which is really all you could ask of an owner is hire people that you trust to run the team and provide the money. Like, you know, if you're withholding money, that makes the guys trying to do their job, you know, life significantly harder. Or if you get involved and meddle, that makes things worse usually. We have a Daniel Jones to Jalen Hyatt touchdown pass from today. If you want to pull that up and get into, wrong tab. I was going to go to that one next. Wanted to hear your thoughts on this connection.
Yeah, love the route from Jalen Hyatt. Obviously, route running a focus for him, something more than just a go route every play. So love to see it. Little head fake at the top of the stem, breaks to the left side, easy pitch and catch. Ball may be a little bit late. Maybe Hyatt slowing down a little bit to make that grab. Maybe not crazy about that, but you know, that's just something we're going to have to get used to and going to have to deal with. But love to see the good route from Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, am I nitpicking too much here if I'm going to complain about how late and slow that came in? Like that can't, I get it's training camp, but like that can't be the throw in game.
The only thing that I'll say in defense of Jones, he probably didn't know what the route was in these one-on-ones. A lot of the times it's kind of just freestyle. Receiver goes out there and just gets open. So maybe he didn't know that Hyatt was going to be breaking left there. Obviously he fakes right and then breaks left. Jones can't really know that which way the receiver is going to break oftentimes in these one-on-ones. So he kind of has to throw the ball after he breaks open. So that's my one time I'm going to defend Daniel Jones here.
Totally fair. I did have another clip that I wanted to share on the show. We got Aaron Rodgers walking out to camp in front of packed house for Jet fans. I'm sure they are very excited to see the quarterback take the field for second day of training camp. I know he's just walking out on the field, but give me all these videos of Aaron Rodgers as we can, please. Like this was the prince that was promised last year, and unfortunately we only got 4 plays of that. So forgive me if I'm even getting excited over him just walking out on the field and getting a big reception from the fans.
You are completely forgiven. You're completely justified in your feelings. It's really exciting to see Aaron Rodgers take the field, and hopefully today we get some of those patented Aaron Rodgers slow-mo back shoulder fades, maybe a throw to Garrett Wilson or just whoever. Excited to see it regardless.
Absolutely. Another thing we wanted to get into Jets-wise before we close. So I thought this was interesting with Hassan Reddick out, officially a holdout. Running with the ones, Jermaine Johnson was one of the starting edge, which no surprise. He was really good last year. But my assumption was that Will McDonald would be the one who would step in and be running alongside the ones. That wasn't the case yesterday. He ran with the twos pretty much exclusively. And Michael Clemens was actually the other starter. So I don't know if I'm ready to say like I am 100% like I'm concerned. This is not ideal, but I really hope when we get to September that Will McDonald is behind Michael Clemens in the pecking order. That would be a little disheartening for me.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but I do wonder if this is a case of Will McDonald not having won the coaching staff's trust, not being the perceived better player yet, or if it's just still working in a younger player and playing seniority here, right? Because we've kind of talked about that before, how Robert Saleh and his staff with rookies, and again, Will McDonald is not a rookie, he's going into his second season, so maybe it isn't applicable here, but with rookies for the Jets, a lot of the times it takes a while before they're fully involved and they take their time and have to go up the pecking order and have to fight off the guys with seniority in order to get that playing time. Maybe that's the case here with Will McDonald. I guess I'm trying to put a positive spin on it, but maybe it's really just a matter of seniority, and maybe he'll work his way up the depth chart as we get deeper into training camp.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And something that I mentioned in a video I did earlier this morning on it was that this time last year, people wrote off Joe Tippmann as a bust because he was actually a third teamer behind Connor McGovern and Wes Schweitzer. And that then quickly changed, and he ended up starting a good chunk of games last year for the Jets. And now I get it. Like, this is a year two guy versus a rookie, but still, you know, we've talked a lot about on the show how the Jets tend to favor the veterans a little bit more. And McDonald is a draft class younger. So this is his second year versus the third year from Michael Clemens. So maybe that's part of it. Also, they play very stylistically different. Michael Clemens is kind of a tweener between an edge and an inside guy. So maybe they kind of wanted more like the JFM kind of replacement in there with Jermaine Johnson. But ironically, Will McDonald's play style is probably about as close to Hassan Reddick. Like, they're both, you know, very thin and agile and bendy around the edge. So if Reddick was out, my thought was, like, when you want the guy that's closer to what Reddick would give you in the defense.
That's what I would think, because you want the player to kind of emulate what's missing from the lineup, kind of similar to what we've talked about with the Giants, how they obviously knew that Darren Waller's retirement was coming, so they brought in Theo Johnson because he emulates that playing style well, and that's also why Lawrence Cager has been on this Giants roster for the last couple of years to kind of be that fill-in for when Darren Waller was injured. So I do see that line of thinking, so I am a little bit surprised that it wasn't McDonald that got put in the lineup to replace Hassan Reddick and that it was Michael Clemens instead. But maybe you do make a good point in saying maybe that's because they wanted that playing style of JFM and maybe they felt that Clemens is more similar there. So that could be an interesting way to look at it and interpret what's going on here. But it is just very notable that McDonald not getting those reps. And I am hoping to see him get those reps soon, because I do think that while, yes, it was a head scratching draft pick and maybe not the exciting rookie season that you wanted from McDonald, I don't think it was bad by any means in a rotational role. So if he can just expand his role, I do think that McDonald can be a solid player for this team, but he's going to need some practice reps throughout training camp in order to take that developmental step.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, BSK, I think, brings up a good comment. Clemens took a step back last year. Maybe he showed a little bit more in OTAs. That could be a part of it too. Like, we didn't really get a ton of coverage of what was happening at OTAs and minicamp. But again, like what I was saying, and then what you just reiterated there on the play style, Clemens' play style is closer to what JFM offered the Jets, where Will McDonald's is closer to Reddick. So maybe in their starting front, they just would have liked to have like that JFM guy or a JFM type of player, the good run defender and more edge setter than just pure pass rush artist. And I don't know, maybe for McDonald's role, like Hassan Reddick's eventually going to make his way back. He's not going to be a starter this year. So maybe instead of running him with the ones temporarily, they just want to run him with the twos, and that's where he's going to be.
Yeah, and I think there you do make a good point about maybe McDonald just isn't an early down player yet. You know, maybe he's a third down rotational pass rusher right now. And obviously there's room for that role to expand, and there's plenty of snaps to go around. And maybe eventually he does start to get first and second down reps. But right now, with Hassan Reddick projected to be in the starting lineup this regular season, how valuable of reps are these reps if McDonald is playing first and second down when you know that he's not going to be during the regular season? I guess would kind of be the way to think about it, because if you know he's going to be playing primarily on third downs as a pass rusher, then maybe in practice you want him on passing downs, practicing pass rushing rather than edge setting and run defending on first and second down. So yeah, I think you bring up a good point there. Maybe that is kind of what it is just they don't want to play him in a role that he's not expected to play, but also it was just the first day of camp. So maybe it's going to be today, McDonald is ahead of Clemens in the order. And then tomorrow, again, it'll be Clemens in front of him in the order. So maybe they're just going to rotate it and flip flop it each day. Who knows? But that's something that they could be doing. And that, of course, would be just a wait and see. How much playing time do each of these players get on each practice will be very interesting.
Yeah, and then BSK follows up and says, how much weight did McDonald put on over the offseason? I don't think that's really come out and been mentioned, but he's listed as 6'3", 241. So he's on the lighter side for a defensive end, which could then go back to he's not an every down player at this point yet. But I mean, in the second half of games on third down or when they're trying to close out games, it wouldn't surprise me if he, racks up some sacks in a situational role.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And I think that's what you're hoping for from McDonald in year 2 is just to see him become a little bit more productive on those pass rushing snaps. Because again, Hassan Reddick will be in the lineup. He's getting fined $50,000 a day right now while he sits out. And we'll ultimately see how that gets resolved. But you do expect it to get resolved in time for the regular season. You expect him to be out there and on the football field. So McDonald, you really just want him to be productive on those passing downs, third and long, get after the quarterback, create a clutch sack, help the field positioning of the offense, that kind of thing. So it's all to be determined with Will McDonald, and we'll see what his role looks like, especially when Hassan Reddick does make his return.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, Anthony, any thoughts on what you're going to be looking for the rest of this week in training camp before we talk next?
Yeah, so I just saw a couple clips. Malik Neighbors going at it with Deonte Banks. That's going to be the battle of the summer for me. I obviously want to see Malik Neighbors step in and have an immediate impact as a stud for the New York Giants. First round draft pick, wide receiver, playmaker, could be the guy that transforms this offense and potentially even saves Daniel Jones's career, depending on how things go. But then you're looking on the other side of the ball, year 2 for Deonte Banks. He had a lot of promising moments as a rookie, but had a lot of room to grow. New defensive scheme. What's it going to look like? That battle, I think that's really going to end up being iron sharpening iron all summer long. First round rookie wide receiver versus first round second year cornerback. Both really talented players, both my guys, both players that I really loved in the pre-draft process and we're thrilled to see on the Giants. So seeing those two kind of go at it, I think will make them both better players and hopefully bring some added excitement to this Giants team for the upcoming season.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I'm going to be watching something we didn't mention yet, but Olu Fashion, who was running with the twos yesterday. Not surprising because Tyron Smith was in the starting rotation, but Morgan Moses did not practice yesterday. So I'm kind of I want to keep a close eye on the offensive line and like what days guys get off and who's coming in when, things like that. And I think eventually we see Olu running with the ones, which will be a really good test for him.
Absolutely. Hopefully that those reps come in sooner rather than later so we could see Olu get that development going and hopefully get an idea of what this Jets offensive line is going to look like this year and beyond.
Beautiful. That's going to do it for us in this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Check out Anthony's work over on Fireside Giants. You can find me at Matt O'Leary NY or on Talking Jets. That'll do it. I'm Matt. He's Anthony, and we will catch you next time.